All right. No, we don't need to allow any more minutes.
Yeah, Stella's very slow this morning. Stella.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, right.
Didn't even get on with that.
Good morning. Welcome councillors, officers and our guests from Wellington Water. This meeting has been held in the supper room of the Waihinga Centre, Martinborough Town Hall. It has been live streamed and will be available to view on Council's YouTube channel. Just as a reminder, there are emergency exits front and back, and we would assemble in the playground area. Councillor Maynard, would you like to do the opening karakia, please?
Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa pounamu te moana, hei huarahi mā tātou I te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou ia tātou katoa.
Kia ora.
Apologies. We have one apology from Councillor Gray this morning, and both Councillor Plimmer and Councillor Elams are attending on Zoom.
And I need to leave early.
And you'll be leaving early. Thank you, Mayor. We need a mover in a second. Yes. Councillor Bosley, would you like to move that we accept the apologies?
I move that we accept the apologies.
All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say no. It's carried. Do you have any conflicts of interest this morning? No, fantastic. And we've got no public participation this morning, so we can move on to item A6, extraordinary business.
Madam Chair, I'm not a member on this committee. However, I'd like speaking rights as a councillor with the approval of the committee. Thank you.
And do I have a councillor to move that? Councillor Bosley and seconded by Councillor Maynard. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, please say no. Motion is carried. Councillor, do you want to speak now?
No, it's just as items arise.
Thank you. We are now moving on to item A6, extraordinary business. I would like to move that the members' report from Mayor Connolly be added to the agenda as item E1. This report was not included on the agenda as the topic for consideration was not identified prior to distribution. It cannot be delayed as there is a high level of public interest which necessitates timely consideration by the committee. Do I have a seconder? Woodcock, all those in favour, please say aye.
No, Madam Chair, before we vote on that, could I ask what the urgency is on this? The high matter of
what the urgency is? Yes, yeah. Mayor Connolly, would you like to speak to the urgency?
That has already been put to the vote and most people have voted.
What?
Well, I didn't get a chance to interrupt. That's the problem with Zoom.
We didn't get to Councillor Plummer sector before we got to the vote, so he's just asking what the level of urgency is.
The level of urgency is that the social benefit for the people of Martinborough accrues whenever a festival or an event takes place. Many of the people, such as the Martinborough Fair, for example, are already in the process of planning, budgeting. And since these things never happen quickly, if we wish to have made a positive decision to the advantage of this community, then we need to get on and get doing it. One of the papers that I can refer to shortly refers from the Business Association to the length of time that they have been asking the council for action on this issue. And I think also if we go back to the community board minutes, I think we will find the same thing. So it's something that is overdue for a decision.
Sorry, I'm a bit concerned about that. I don't recall any in the last 3 years any community board minutes on that matter at all. And the other thing I would say is that we're talking about bringing something into urgency which will involve ratepayers' money and maintenance. for the benefit of effectively commercial activities. And I'm not quite sure what, rushing this is not really the smart thing to do here. Particularly when, and you've talked about the Martinborough Fair, that organisation raises over $100,000 a year, and if we're talking about $5,000 or $6,000 for a traffic management plan for what is effectively a commercial activity, surely that can be absorbed in the short term while we work through this in a much more logical way. The costs of rushing this may far outweigh the benefit to the community.
I suppose we have two courses of action at this point. I guess we can debate whether or not it is added and the merit on which it's added, or we can vote to add or not and then debate the course of action moving forward from the report once it's added.
Right. I'm not sure if Aidan is able to add anything, but I don't believe I've seen anything come through the community board with regards to council taking this over. So can you just clarify, Aidan, in the previous 3 years, what came through to the community board? And I haven't seen anything from the Martinborough Business Association either. So I'm not quite sure where this came through and where the documentation is. Aidan, are you able to clarify or remember when this came through to the community board? Perhaps I wasn't there.
Sorry, folks, I've just missed the last 5 minutes trying to get logged in.
Okay, so just to catch you up, Aidan, we haven't yet voted on whether or not the report will be accepted. There's just some clarification taking place. So Councillor Maynard is just asking what your recollection is of whether or not or how this came to the community board in the previous triennium.
And that's in relation to State 53 and
State Highway
being changed. I don't recall anyone coming to the community board with this request. Can you just clarify that?
There hadn't been any. There had been informal discussions, but there hadn't been a formal proposal through the community board. There had been lots of discussions with the community and the community board about State 53 and the risks of.
That was the safety of Princess Street, wasn't it? More so than.
There had been discussions with local businessmen as to costs of traffic management plans when they wanted to do work on their building. However, there was nothing formal that had come through to the community board in the last 3 years.
So I'll come back to the vote. So the vote at this point is to add the report in as extraordinary business. It's been moved and seconded by Councillor Woodcock. So all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
So that's Councillor Woodcock and the Mayor. All those against, please say no.
I'd just like some information.
This seems mad.
I don't think it meets the term of urgent. I think I've got no problems with it going forward to our officers to come back with a report to us on it properly. If this is something the Mayor wants to raise, then it should be done as a matter of due process, not as a matter of urgency.
So sorry, those no's again. Did you get all of those? No. So it was Councillor Bosley, Maynard, Gray, and Councillor Plymouth.
And Aidan? Where are you?
Sorry, Aidan, where did you vote?
I had voted for it.
You voted for?
Yes.
So that's 4 no's, 2, 3 yeses. Is that everyone? Yes.
Pretty sure it lost.
Yes.
So the motion is not carried. Sorry, we just had to do this figures and make sure we had everybody recorded correctly.
Council Plymouth suggested a report.
So
take an action that
Councillor Plymouth, did you want to take an action that a report is our officers on this?
Yeah, look, I understand what Martin's on about here, but I think perhaps it should go first instance maybe to the community board, but also to get a proper officers report. And we've seen emails from Stefan today that our roading manager is not there, so any issues that might have a serious budgetary implication should probably go through our roading manager to get his comments on it as well before we do anything any further.
We've captured that action. Thank you, Councillor Plummer. We will move on now to item A7, the confirmation of previous minutes. Do I have a mover to confirm that the minutes of the Infrastructure and Community Services meeting held on 1 February are a true and correct record? Thank you, Councillor Gray. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Elams, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, please say no. The motion is carried. Are there any matters arising from these minutes, please?
So as requested at the last meeting, the minutes from the Assets and Services Committee meeting on the 24th of August are included for discussion as part of any actions related to previous minutes.
May I? My understanding was that what we were hoping for, rather than having the minutes from the assets and services, was to actually have the previous action item list. So that way, even if things from since 24th of August had been actioned, it was so that way we knew what had been done, what was going, and what had been, you know, in the scope.
So my understanding is that's how we got the new Infrastructure and Community Services Committee action list. It was essentially that same list, but with a new title. Is that your understanding? So this action list that we have, I believe, has been carried over directly from it.
So these are printouts of the Wellington Water dashboards, which were included in the Partnership and Operations report.
So sorry.
I was just asked to blow them up to make them more readable in hard copy for this meeting. So that's not related to the actions. But Stefan, maybe you could confirm, have the Assets and Services open actions been carried over to the Infrastructure and Community Services actions from your knowledge?
I thought we did that here through the policy and all of those actions were aligned, and then they were driven into the new committee action register. That was my remembrance of it, but
No, what I was asking was we wanted to see, because there were things that were possibly still outstanding that may have been actioned, so they're not showing on here because it's just all the open things, but we wanted to see what the full picture was of what was there from the 24th, as at the 24th of August on the action item list, just so then that way we know as governance that we have covered everything, you know, so it gives us good oversight going into the new triennium, and we hadn't seen any of that.
I mean, we can flip that around. I think it's on the internet. So if you're looking for
I know Aidan and I have definitely run through the entire action list. So maybe it is that we just haven't circulated it. Right. Definitely exists. Okay. And we have definitely questioned any updates around, you know, further actions and what's closed and what's open. So I suspect it just hasn't been formally circulated.
So would you then like the full actions list from the Assets and Services Committee from the previous triennium be circulated to ICS members for considering?
It was just to have a look at the list, so that way we knew exactly what had been done since August 24th. So from that action list, where everything sat, and then that way, whatever's open, we've got it on the new list, you know, and it's got the oversight, so we've seen it and we know. You know, be able to.
That's your understanding as well, though, Aidan, is the list is updated and exists. It just hasn't been circulated. Thank you.
Yeah, I can do that.
Lovely, thank you, Katie. Any other matters arising? We will move on now to decision reports of the chief executive and staff, starting with item B1, the adoption of the Soldiers Memorial New War Statement proposal for community consultation. The adoption proposed, sorry, are you right?
Yeah, no.
Can I please have our Wellington Water representative to speak to this report, please?
And to Stella, just put it there.
Good morning, Adam.
Do you want me to just kick into it? Yeah. Yeah, thanks, thanks committee for having us here today. Online, we've got Charles Barker, our Director of Regulatory Services, and Justine Jones, Project Manager on the project across GHD. So just a quick reminder, you've got all the printouts in the paper there. There's a few attachments, but this is for the Memorial Park water treatment plant upgrade work that we've been doing. So this sort of fits in alignment with the work that we've been doing on upgrading our treatment plants and this sort of drinking water compliance space. And for Memorial Park, that comes with both a resilience element too. For Greytown residents. So to date, we have fabricated the containerised plant, which is currently sitting off site, and we are moving to the next phase of how are we actually going to construct this. And one of our constraints is around the existing bore being able to continue safe drinking water supply for the Greytown residents, and then therefore the trigger for proposal for a new bore, which also triggers the need to go through the consenting process for the reserves management plan. So, it's pretty straightforward in here, but the paper here you've got in front of you is asking for committee's adoption of the statement of proposal. So this is the kicking off the formal community engagement part. The project team, led by Justine, have already been doing sort of informal community engagement to key stakeholders, the swimming pool. There's a lot of stakeholders involved in around the Memorial Park site, the campground, sporting groups, and some of that feedback you've got in there. Unless you want to add anything more, Justine, we'll open up for any questions.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Old.
Through you, Madam Chair. Aidan, the primary source of water supply for Greytown is from Woodside, is it not?
It's currently Memorial Park.
Sorry, it's currently.
Currently for Greytown, it's Memorial Park, Soldiers Memorial Park.
So we invested a considerable amount of money to provide fresh, good quality drinking water services from Woodside for both Featherston and Greytown, correct?
Yep.
So the Memorial Park bore is created a degree of resilience across the Greytown community, and solely and wholly for that. So we seem to be investing an awful lot of money now on a secondary supply of water source. Would that be my fair understanding?
I think the other things we have to be wary of is, Greytown's been undertaking a lot of growth. There's a lot of bridges on supply. So, I have to talk again back with our modelling team around supply constraints. But the purpose of this site going forward will be more of a backward secondary supply to Greytown, and depending on what the demand is, Waihinga would be more that primary supply for both townships.
So without being too parochial about Featherston's secondary water supply, which it doesn't exist any longer, we had Tate's Creek and Bullbush Gully. We don't have a secondary supply, backup supply for other than the main supply from Woodside. So it's a big investment for this council. There is no doubt about it. And if it's a primary source of water, then that's absolutely fine. But it is only a secondary source of water, and I'm just wondering why we're going down this path with this. And obviously, it has to meet standards. There's no doubt about it. Yet we're talking about another bore, because you don't believe that that's going to.
Sorry, Councillor Mayor Connolly first.
I understand there are 4 bores at Woodside. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So don't want to put you on the spot exactly, but how much water, I'll give you a couple of questions. You can sort of choose the easiest to answer. How much water is drawn from each of those 4 bores on average on a daily, weekly basis? Or, since that might be quite tough to bring up the topic, right? What, assuming there is a maximum amount of water that we can draw from those 4 bores, what percentage are we drawing at the moment, please?
What are you trying to answer there?
Well, what I'm trying to answer is we've got 4 bores.
Yes.
Are we drawing 100% of their capacity from each one? Or is there considerable surplus capacity in them?
That sounds like a good question to take away and come back to. I mean, also, I don't have those numbers on.
No, that's fine.
I do understand that the latest bore that we have put there, the 4th bore, does produce about twice as much as the older 3 bores. Is in the realm of about double what the other ones are producing individually, as for how they're operating in terms of their percentage supply.
Right. Well, yes, if I may just end up by saying, I'd certainly be interested in the answer, because my understanding is that 2 of the bores are functioning well and effectively, but 2 of them could be, in fact, drawing a lot more water if there was some work done on them. But you can come just. Thank you.
Mr. Corbett, did you have something to add to that question?
Yeah, I think just for the Wellington Waters team, I think where these questions are coming from, and I suspect you'll get more of some of their own, is that there might be a feeling that the reason for the additional capacity isn't really being made out clearly and properly. And you might want to dig into the reasons. And we've got 4 bores in Woodside. Can we draw more capacity? What is their capacity? You've got another bore in Memorial, which is drawing 46 litres a second, and I think it can go to 60, so it's got a fairly good capacity on it. What are the urgent reasons for the new capacity? I think that's what people are asking. And it might be that there needs to be some data behind that, or you could point to it in the room. Some of your team might be able to help you out.
Councillor.
Could I, sorry, if I could just jump in. I have the benefit of being online, as I am able to communicate with the team in GHD, and I've asked them whether we are abstracting the full amount that we have consents to do from the boreholes at Waihini, and they've told me that we aren't, because because we're essentially running out of water. We should in theory be able to take 60 to 80 litres of water, depending on the time of year, from the consents, but we're only getting about 45 litres per second at the moment. And I think another reason why we are relying on the Memorial Park Board to deliver water supply for Greytown is because at the moment the treatment plant upgrades in Waihini have not been fully completed, and there isn't the capacity to supply both Featherston and Greytown from the Waihini treatment plant. Obviously, in the long term, that is the aim, but for the short term, potentially into the medium term, I'm not sure on the time frames for things, but there isn't the water to deliver to both towns.
Thank you. So we're going to go to Councillor Bosley and then Councillor Plummer.
Thank you, Chair. And what is the state of the Greytown pump now? What is the state of it? Like last leaks, turn it on, turn it off, we can't turn it on again. What's the state of it?
You got some information on the existing bore there, Justin?
Yeah, sure. So Wellington Water have known for a few years that there is that the existing borehole is aging and could fail imminently. Obviously you can't really tell exactly when something's not going to work, and that the implication of that would be there would potentially be no water or limited water for Greytown residents. The reason behind that is the third-party supplier went in to look at the pump and was and identified that it wasn't in great condition. Under normal circumstances, we would switch the pump off, take it out of the borehole, maybe switch in a new pump. But that could take 1 to 2 weeks to do. When we do that, we identify that the bore itself is in poor condition, because obviously it's been there for quite a while now. We might have to do refurbishment to the bore itself. That could take up to a month, plus another approximately month just commissioning things, just to make sure that it's running properly before Wellington Water sort of can take ownership of that piece of equipment back again. So potentially that's a 2.5 month shutdown of the bore, and at the moment we just don't have the supply elsewhere to maintain the appropriate levels of supply to the town, which is why we're proposing to put a new bore in, because we can keep the existing system running, and then do all the commissioning, and then transfer everything onto the new borehole, and it'd be a much smoother transition. So, we can't pinpoint exactly when the system might fail, but it is definitely in a state where we expect that could happen at any time.
That's very terrifying then. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I think a lot of what we're talking about here is how do we manage risk, and what I've scrolling through the documents and so on, there seems to be a very little part in the document about what is the risk of failure and what is the risk of whether we don't do this. And to me, that's the critical answer here is not how much water we can get out of Wahine, but what happens if we don't renew this or this fails? What is the actual direct impact upon the community at Greytown and potentially Featherston as well? And it doesn't seem to be very well spelt out in the document at all. And if, as governors, we're about managing risk, we're not about managing operations, we're about managing risk. And Adam, maybe in the documents when you're doing these things, if I just sort of point you to a thing that in your document that talks about risk here, the first thing you say in risks as per the register, a relationship with EV. Well, actually, the biggest risk is what happens to the community of Greytown if this bore is not done. The relationship is a risk. It's a management risk. It's not an operational risk for people turning their taps on. So perhaps a little bit more information about how we can mitigate the risk, or, I want to know what happens if this community says, no, we're not going to do it. What is the direct impact to the people of Greytown? Because at the moment, it is their major water source. Going forward, is it going to be their major water source or not? And I think we don't have the information here to make a responsible decision on risk management at this stage. It's how I've sort of said. I'd like to make a decision, but to have a decision that's good enough for the community to say, you have worked through these processes, we need to be able to say to the community on their behalf, yes, we have examined the risk through the people of Greytown, and this is why we have made a decision one way or another. Does that make sense?
Councillor Woodcock.
Thanks, Chair. So on Tuesday, the Greytown Community Board and myself went with Adam, which was very good. Him and Roger showed us around, very informative. We looked at the park bore and at the Woodside bore. So we learned a fair bit of information, along with other stuff we've already done a bit of research on and whatnot. A couple of little points to note first. The Greytown Community Board have made concerning comments to do with the fact that the community board seemed to be left out of the early consultation process. And they have also noted that they wish to put a submission in on this project. Where do I go to from here? So firstly, one thing I sort of wondered is why are we using outside contractors to consult with the public when we have a great in-house comms team itself? Maybe that could lower costs. Now, from our tour on Tuesday, I see the plant is in need of updating. It is quite antiquated. From what I see, the main priority, probably the only real priority is the pumps, which need upgrading, which if you upgrade a pump, it's not a hell of a big job in the meantime, to make sure that keeps going. And the pump then can be utilised somewhere else if something's shifted. If we'd done this with it running in conjunction with Woodside, I'm sure it would last long enough for us to receive the Greater Wellington data from the helicopter survey that's been going on to make sure this is the right site and the right option.
Yes. Because
I'm still in the mindset that Featherston needs its own separate water source, as Colin was saying, well before Greydown needs one. At the moment, we currently feed Featherston on a very long pipeline along a fault line through a river that has quite a high risk factor to it, I suppose. When I still see that as a bit of a silly option to be feeding Featherston itself, when we should be looking at an option for Featherston having its own bore site or site of other sorts. And then on top of that, there is also future proposals to spend millions on that pipeline to do with the Taranaki crossing upgrade later down the track, which is another big cost for the ratepayers.
So, Madam Chair, could I just, sorry, Woody, sorry to interrupt. With Martin going, do we have a quorum? Because I know that Aidan and I don't count towards a quorum.
No,
you guys can vote.
No.
Yeah, we can vote, but we don't count towards a quorum.
You do. There is a new
next year
that allows members joining on Zoom for the next year to.
Yeah, no, that's not, we're not counted towards a quorum, but we have voting rights, is my understanding. Stefan, is that right?
No, it counts as quorum.
Yeah.
We have a
count as a quorum.
I just would, since we've just taken a break, I would just like to remind councillors that the questions at hand for this particular topic are whether or not we adopt this particular consultation process and document moving forward. So there's some great questions happening around the table, some great direction, but can we just make sure that we're sticking to the question that's actually at hand, is whether or not we're going to adopt this consultation.
And through you, Chair, that's where I was going. We are arranging a little, and the question is whether to adopt the consultation document and whether you'd like any changes made to it, potentially around risk, for example, to make it clearer and better. It will then go through continue the public consultation that's been ongoing. There will be hearings, and it will come back to your table again for decision. So the question here is really around continuing the consultation process and whether you've got any guidance, whether you're happy with it.
So that would be the place that the community board would get to make their submission, and other things would be raised. So with that in mind, do we have any guidance for changes to this document as it stands? So if risk has been raised as an area of concern, do we have anything else any other changes or conclusions that we'd like to make to this document?
Well, I'd just like to make a statement about, so on page 10, it states the importance of water for firefighting purposes, which is true for town, of course. Yet at number 7 on page 11, in strategic drives and legislative requirements, emergency management is not ticked, and neither is health and safety, yet this report uses wording with health and safety deeply entrenched to do with water quality. So does that need to be, those boxes need to be ticked too?
Adam, did you want to?
Well, that'd be back to the team, see whether that needs to be, those need to be ticked as well.
Any further comments before we move on to the recommendations?
Oh, and just one other, with the financials then, is there going to be a more accurate costings of it, Adam, rather than just a variation from 3 to 500,000, etc.? Because I believe you've already got the plant basically made, sitting there to go to be chucked in somewhere, wherever it ends up going.
Yeah, and that's, like I said, it's reference to the new bore. We can have a look at that, see what we've got there, Justine, in terms of what makes up those figures and whether there's any more information we can add into that.
Does the variation align to which option is chosen, or is it just simply a variation on the preferred option?
That is in reference to the preferred option.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we'll move to the recommendations. We have 4. We'll move them in a block. Do I have a mover to move items 1, 2, 3, and 4? Councillor Plummer.
Sorry, no, I just wanted to ask just a clarification with
Yes.
part 4, the adopt the statement of proposal. I know you've just mentioned, Stefan, that what I raised about highlighting risk in that document. So could we make sure that that is done before it does go out for consultation?
So we could add to that one, so that as it reads, adopt the statement of proposal for consultation using the special consultative procedure with the community, with subject to the amendments raised today.
Yeah, just highlighting the issue of the risk
Subject to
management.
the highlighting of risk.
Yeah. Okay. Then if that's happy, I'm happy to propose we accept that.
Thank you. I'll take you as our mover. Do I have a seconder, please? Gray.
And I just noting as well that can we please get some feedback about what Councillor Woodie's just brought up about what you've marked as why it's priority, but health and safety isn't marked, and I mean that's a bit of a concern. So can we just make sure that it's actually correct as well? So if we're saying it's a risk, it should be marked as a risk.
So we'll move to a vote. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, please say no. The motion is carried. Thank you, Adam, Justine, and Charles for your time today. Thank you. Right, we will move now to item C1, the update from the Partnership and Operations Group report. Do I have a mover to receive the update from the Partnership and Operations Group? And do I have a seconder? Aidan, thank you, Councillor Elams. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. The motion is carried. Mr. Corbett, would you like to speak to your report, please?
Good morning, everyone. Good to see you. We have listened carefully to the members of this committee and councillors more broadly, and heard their desire to have more regular reporting into the committee. For information reporting, but at a headline level that just gives you the ability to see across the business and understand what's going on, what's on track, what's off track. And so this first for information report to you is a response to that, an effort to give you a helicopter view of what's happening across the P&O group in roading and water and amenities, and in libraries and community development. So we might not have it exactly right, and we're really interested in your feedback about how the information is presented and if we can improve it. But that's the objective. That's the objective here. We have been fairly busy, and I've summarised what we've been doing across the group in the report. There are some headwinds which you'll be really well aware of in terms of cost rising, lack of materials, labour shortages, and particularly in roading, that is impacting our performance in some areas on delivery. Uncertainty around Three Waters reform is adding to some frustration around our ability to plan and budget. And but I'm sure the announcements today are going to clear all that up for us.
That's the pain.
But you know, otherwise, I'm happy with the way that with the momentum across the group, we are still delivering and delivering at a fair pace across all the business units, irrespective of the fact that there is some challenge at the moment. So look,
Councillor Plummer has his hand up.
Yeah.
Councillor Plummer, did you have a question that you'd like to get in now before Mr. Corbett continues?
No, I've got a question about about the water, some of the water stuff. So carry on, Stefan, when you're ready, I can ask the question.
oh look, I'll stop warbling on and we can get into it. I did notice, councillors, that the printed copies that I got, they were very hard to read, the dashboard. So I printed those out. The team's printed those out for you in a larger copy if you need it, just so that you don't strain your eyes.
So much easier to read. No one ever.
And I'll try and improve the format of the
We need some councillor magnifying.
moving forward, I'll try and improve that. So with that, you know, I'm happy to answer questions and receive your feedback.
We'll start with Councillor Plummer's water question.
Thank you. I see that we can't see you anymore. For some reason, the screen's gone blank at your end. Stefan, just interested about Donald Street Pump Station. I see we've started work on that, which I'm really pleased to see. But is that, we've been talking a lot about that particular issue as part of our annual plan consultation. So are we preempting something that was part of our annual plan discussion?
Well, Wellington Water can jump in here. Donald Street Pump Station is a project that is tagged for next financial year, and we've started some of the. But we confident in the fact that it is a priority one project that's urgently required, and based on the feedback that we've been getting on the desire of councillors to progress that project as fast as possible, we have started work on the design and planning parts of it it'll be in the last stages of this year.
Yeah. So there's some pre-construction activities happening on site at the moment. We do need to put those power lines underneath. They'll get in the way of the work that we're going to be doing there, but they should be kicking off that work in the next couple of months.
I have no problems with the work, Adam, at all. I'm just trying to think about the timing of this in terms of providing money for you to do this, which is our responsibility to give you the money. And I thought that was a priority one for within the next year's budget. So I'm not quite sure where the money's come from out of this year.
It was this year, 22-23.
Well, we're talking about this particular project as part of the number one priority for next financial year, aren't we? Is this a timing issue?
There's opportunity based on, I guess, some of the other projects that are happening on the program to bring the construction forward, which is what we've done.
Okay. Fine.
So the answer, Alistair, is that you're correct, and that we're drawing money off this year's budget to start the work, because the capital program is tracking slightly under. And you're also right that if on the outside chance that councillors, as part of the annual planning process, said, no, we don't want Donald Street pump station to progress, we'd be in a bit of trouble. But we have to keep the program moving, and we have to do the things that we know from our guidance from you and from Wellington Water Advice, have to keep moving through the capital.
Don't get me wrong, Stefan. I'm very pleased to see the project starting.
Okay.
My question is, will we see? We're using money from this year's budget to do this, but it was budgeted for next year. Are we going to see that? Is that one of the parts of savings that you can make into next, so for our discussions that are coming up next week, for example? I don't know how much money are we forward funding? Whatever question.
We'll definitely pick that up for you in the annual plan workshops, Councillor.
Great, thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. Corbett this morning? Aidan, did you have any questions? Yes.
Thanks, Stefan. That was in relation. I'm just trying to, not very good at multitasking here with two different screens. So you've given the rundown on the water issues at the moment. Are you going to do a separate rundown on roading issues, Stefan, or?
No, at the moment, councillors, this committee receives an operational summary of what the Ruamahanga Roads team is doing every month. That's a lot of detail and not appropriate for tabling in this forum, but it does give you that really granular view of what's happening on each road across the district. And I think that's really important that you see that, because just to understand the sheer volume of work that's being pumped through the Ruamahanga teams. On top of that, we intend to give you this sort of dashboard summary of things, and this is more about things at a headline level that would concern a governor and handles. And you see, if everything is green, the idea is that you move on and keep reading. It's only where there's red that we would be starting to come to you and asking you for support or advice, or giving you proper transparent visibility of something that's going off track. Otherwise, really, it's if everything's green, you should be able to move through it. So I'm not planning in this committee to go to present on water and present on roading. I'd rather take the papers as read and then leave you to question me about things and offer me feedback on things, if that's all right.
That's great. Thanks for that, Stefan. I'm just going to ask the question, and I see that in the dashboard, it's all green for the pedestrian lighting around the Martinborough Square. I'm just wondering if you're able to give us a quick verbal synopsis of where things are at the moment with that project, please.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So on the pedestrian lighting in Martinborough Square and the one further down on Jellicoe, we have secured a project manager, Cara Atkinson, and our project manager is now on board and is asking several suppliers for designs and pricing. And she's got 2 at the moment and is asking us if we'd like a 3rd or not, in order to make sure that we get the most competitive price, and that we get that we take on a supplier that can install them as quickly as possible as well. That has
attached at the top.
Make sure they're well attached to the stems.
Yeah.
And
Hello, second-hand ones from Wellington coming up.
So the intention is to have those price estimates reviewed and out for installation pricing by the end of this week. And she is looking at local contractors also at the same time for the civil works that need to be done for the installation. I would say that in the next week or 2, we should be able to get costed estimates in for this group, and I won't wait until you meet again. I'll supply them to you intercessionally so that you can get them the same time that I do. But I think, there is momentum in the project now that we have a project manager on board. And I hope to see this start as soon as possible. Cara has offered to, once we do have the cost of plans, has offered to come in and brief the committee if you think that would be useful, just to make a quick presentation on things, because obviously she's going to be the specialist in leading this through design, tender, and then delivery.
Is she able to also present to the Martinborough Community Board?
I can ask her.
One of the drugs, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, that'd be cool.
Good suggestion.
Thanks.
Thanks for that update, Stefan. It's great to hear.
It is awesome.
Councillor Woodcock.
Oh, cheers, Chair. Stefan, just a little curious question. I don't know if you can answer it. The Steel Road resurfacing local roads, it has little numbers out past them. I'm not sure if you can tell us what those numbers mean. Because it has Heckler's Road down there. Well, Heckler's Road's actually a gravel road. And there is a small section of seal where it comes off Popeye to lead into it, like half the size of this room sort of thing. I was just wondering why they would go out there just to seal that tiny bit with no other bit of road around it being done, where it could be linked into when they do Popeye or Par Road or something like that. Do you know how that would work?
Yeah, thank you. No, I'm sorry, I don't know what those numbers refer to. And as this is a closed item, it's not fresh in my mind, it's not on my radar, but I can do a bit of digging.
Yeah, good. I was just wondering if the numbers of the meters, like 3 meters to 40 meters road, you know what I mean? The section, because that's the only bit, the first part is the only bit that is.
Let me find out.
Yeah, awesome stuff.
Any further questions? I was just saying to Katie, we've kind of merged the update from Stefan and the action reports, action item reports together, but that's fine. So just want to check if you've got any further questions on either item or moving right along. Good. Oh, Councillor Elams.
Just in the dashboard there, Stefan, there's some issues there that are coloured in as yellow. So the exterior paint for senior housing, has that just been put on the back burner because of those structural issues or those weatherboarding issues? And
yeah, that's correct. I think what's happened there is that the contractors have gone into painting of the senior units, and they've discovered that there's further work that needs to be done, and they've come back to us and we've pushed forward for the time being as we work through the budgetary implication of that. Is that a fair representation? Yeah, I think that's what happened there.
Councillor Maynard.
Can we just clarify? I'm just a bit curious as to the major concern with city care. So there's the red on this.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
City care. So
Yeah.
there's a bit of a concern.
No, I mean it's red is probably a bit dramatic. It's a light red.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's almost pink.
we I mean, I don't think City Care would mind me saying this, but for a number of months, there've been a collection of concerns raised about mainly mowing and weeding in the wards. I mean, the weather has been particularly conducive to things growing, as we all know. But nevertheless, there has been some concerns around weeding not being done to standard, mowing not being done, particularly around special events. And we've received that feedback and heard that. We sat down with City Care management and had a really good conversation with them about what to do about that. there's a number of reasons that's happening. One of them is the contract that's in place is pretty clunky. It's not an industry standard contract. It's one that the council put in place. It wasn't one that came from the sector, and it doesn't have particularly good ways of measuring output. And there isn't a schedule, because it doesn't measure output well. There isn't a schedule of maintenance that links to output in the way that you'd expect it. Now we're working through that with City Care, and they're giving us much more regular information. They're going to try and build metrics into the work program, so a certain level of grass or a certain frequency of mowing, that kind of thing. And that will greatly improve things. And I think actually, if you may have noticed yourselves that there has been an improvement in the mowing and weeding since we've raised that with them. So I think they've been quite responsive. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think it's a fair statement. The rate was actually in relation to the finance side of it. When the budget was set, it was 178k short of what the fixed contract actually is. So, and that's probably really a shade of pink as well. And it's helping to absorb that in the budget as opposed to seeking the budget funding. Where those fixed costs are at. But yes, Stefan's right. Where that relationship is at, that's really the green there.
Okay, great.
Fantastic. Thank you. Councillor Plummer.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Given that we've merged the two agenda items, first, just make a quick comment on what you just said, Stefan. I always get amused when we use the term output as opposed to outcome. Output seems to be a much more bureaucratic term to say let's just spend money, and regardless, but outcome actually means that we're measuring an outcome, and that's what we're obviously funding for, is an improvement. So maybe we look at the language, I think. Sorry, Stefan. But that aside, I'd like to talk about water races and where we are, and Colin will probably have a view on this as well. It seems to be, it probably seems to be in a little bit of limbo, and I'm sure that the farmers have probably, given that we've disbanded the water race committee, maybe I think certainly to get an officer's view about where we're going to go with this, and I can only talk for the Mururoa one, where there's a hell of a lot of farmers that past where I live who probably still have a vested interest in understanding where this is going, and maybe that committee should be re-established, so to provide some support to those farmers who use the systems. I don't know, Colin, you got any views on this? You've been involved with it for years and years.
I'm just keen to hear. I had a brief conversation with Robin before the meeting, but really keen to hear from an officer's perspective where we're at.
There's one more minute and then we've got.
Yeah, I think I can't resist the temptation to talk about outputs and outcomes. So just briefly, the problem with the contract is that the outcome is very fuzzy. The outcome is maintain a high quality standard of care, and without that outcome being linked to outputs that you can measure, mow twice a week, keep grass at a certain height, no visible weeds along berms, that kind of thing. Without your outputs linked to your outcome, the contract's quite hard to measure. And
I think, Stefan, that what you've just said there is an outcome, not an output.
All right, well then
we 2 centimetres is an outcome, not an output.
I'm very pleased to report we're in violent agreement, Mr. Plymouth. Now on water races. The problem with water races is that we still I don't want to throw my colleagues in. I don't want to put my colleagues in the regional council in a bad light. This is not designed to do that. But we are still waiting for their advice on how they want to implement their new rules on the water races. Now, we stand ready to help them implement those rules, to understand those rules, to communicate with our customers about those rules. And we have invited a joint approach to communications and engagement. And unfortunately, though, Other priorities in Greater Wellington Regional Council have meant that they haven't been able to finish that comms piece. And it's a really important piece of work because it includes all kinds of options like how to draw water out of the water race and use it in a way that stock can feed, different options for fencing that might allow stock to feed, reticulation for pump with using pump, etc., etc. This is important information that will determine whether the water races can be used for their original purpose or not, and where the funding might come from to make those changes for landowners. So our intention is still the same. It's to take a joint approach, understand the rules, advertise them, explain them, but we have been held up in doing that. In terms of the larger picture, which is still bubbling away, I'll stop in a minute. In terms of the larger picture that's still bubbling away on whether the council should control all of this or Wellington Water should control all of this, you'll remember that we were waiting for the reform timetable to be confirmed, because why take it on, if Wellington Water is going to continue on for some years and vice versa. So I'm hoping that the clarity around that will come soon and we'll be able to return to you and have a more detailed conversation about who should be running and managing the water races.
Councillor Olds.
Stephen, thanks for that, and appreciate the work that's been going on. But we have there's two issues. I guess one is that we have a consent application that's been lodged for the last 4 years. It'd be nice to know where that sits at the moment. And the other thing is, how closely are we working with CDC in terms of their network as well? And I see Robin's got a hand up, so I think it's.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. So just this morning, I met with a group that has been meeting for about the last 3 months, consisting of a land management support person from Greater Wellington, Lawrence Stevenson from Carlton District Council, and myself. We're meeting every 2 weeks to work on a collaborative and consistent engagement plan for communicating with our water users, one source of truth around what the guidelines are going to be and how we're going to be able to support the users to implement those guidelines. It has been held up a bit, and you will probably remember that there was a mapping exercise that was underway that was going to identify whether water races were artificial or used to be streams. That has not been completed yet. We are told it will be completed at the end of April. There's a website that's been created by Greater Wellington that's going to direct and provide information that's in development at the moment. So we are working with Carlton. We're aware that they've recently done a survey of their users. And so we're talking about the fact, as Stephen mentioned, that Wellington Water may be going away, might have been going away, and that there would be a change in the future, but we are working with them.
And a current consent for Longwood?
I've spoken to Russell a couple of times. That's still on hold until the guidelines are confirmed, and those guidelines are still in draft in Greater Wellington Regional Council. But every 2 weeks, we make sure that we say to Greater Wellington what we really want to know is what is the support, how are we going to help the users?
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Robin. Really appreciate that.
Councillor Elams.
Through you, Chair. Thanks for that update, Robin. I'm just wondering if at some stage, perhaps, Robin, we could meet up with you offline to have a discussion with yourself, with Stefan, and perhaps with Colin, to get an understanding on those discussions that you're having with GWRC and CDC, to see if just to get a greater understanding of where that's at and if that work can help us move forward.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Yeah, just before you close the segment of the meeting, I do want to invite you all to think about the kind of information that would be useful to be tabled here and discussed here, because you're still fairly new in terms of a team. For example, it may be appropriate for us to table formally the documents on Hinakura Road, which have been released to the public through the residents of Hinakura, but haven't yet been tabled publicly. I don't see any reason why, for example, they couldn't be tabled here. And there may be other larger issues that you would like to request some visibility on. And so please feel free to talk to me about that. This should be a two-way conversation about the agenda and what's important to you. Totally agree.
Yeah, right, unless there are any pressing questions for Mr. Corbett, we will move on to the chair's report. Thank you, Mr. Corbett.
Thank you.
We are now going to move on and consider item D1, which I will just note that there was a small error in your agenda pack where you were given last meeting's chair's report. You will have, for those of you in attendance today, have the printed copy in front of you, and it is also on Stella. Thank you, Katie. So, with that being said, do I have a mover to receive the chairperson's report? Councillor Gray, thank you. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Horsley, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. The motion is carried. And I would invite Councillor Elams as the official chair of this committee to please speak to you.
Good morning, team. Apologies for not being present, and also apologies for the circumstances behind the chair report. It was completed late last month and in time for our original scheduled date of our committee meeting. However, it was obviously been delayed, and there's been an error in not formatting it and assembling it correctly. So I know you probably haven't had much opportunity to get through it and review it. Essentially, some discussions there about the weather events that we've had this last 4 months of this year. Keen to see a lessons learned review occur after these two cyclone events. Previous CE, Harry, the CE had mentioned that there was going to be a lessons learned approach after the cyclone hail event, and it would certainly be beneficial if we're able to do that with Gabriel as well. Discussion there about the Hinakura Hill, and I'll certainly endorse Stefan's suggestion of releasing all those reports to the public, whether we can do them as an attachment to this agenda after the meeting. I'm unsure of the process for that. And then the final, I think the final issue, the last issue there was that in mid-March, I spoke at the Combined Council Forum in Marston about concerns which have been relayed to me along with other councillors and ratepayers regarding forestry / around the South Wairarapa. And that was a discussion with the other three councils, and there was uptake from the mayors and councillors from Marston District Council, Carden District Council. And it was interesting that while we were having that presentation, the chair of GWRC entered the room and made comment as well. And the final point was in Wellington Water's dashboards, they make comment about a risk that they have with regards to consultant and contractor resourcing being drawn out of the Wellington district as a result of those cyclones. And certainly is a question, and hopefully we might be able to have more local contractors engaged doing Wellington water work for South Wairarapa in the district. anyone got any questions at all, or?
Thank you, councillor Elam. Any questions?
Actually, I do. Thank you for this, for the support. Apologies, I am catching up on that. But at the forum that you presented with regards to the slash, Aidan, so you're saying that there was actually an appetite for the three councils to kind of work together along with Greater Wellington?
Yes.
What does that look?
The mayors from the other two councils and the councillors were all keen to have a discussion. I think.
Yeah, so that topic was tabled for discussion at the mayor's and deputy mayor's regular catch-up. Unfortunately, the meeting that it was scheduled for was postponed, and we're just looking to reschedule it now due to illness and unavailability of several of the mayors. So it is still on the agenda to be discussed, but I believe exactly as Aidan does that there is real appetite to look at it and to work together.
I think it'd be good just to know, look, I mean, it's really cool to hear that actually all of the councils, this is something, and we've seen like how much infrastructure damage can happen with regards to like taking out the bridges and things like that. So when it comes to slash, and but not only that, it's dangerous, it's so dangerous. And so I'm wondering if there's going to be a committee or, perhaps, or, if a group's going to be set up, maybe just keep us informed. That'd be awesome. Because I think for us at the end of where the water flows, we'll probably notice it more. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions for Councillor Elam? Mr. Corbett.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to reassure this team that Wellington Water does make use of local contractors where possible. And we have used, for example, Open Grey, GE Electrical, Costa and Stevens, Harvest Electronics, City Care, etc., on several key projects in the region, including the Martinborough Manganese Reduction Plant, Waiahine Water Treatment Plant, Pinot Grove Wastewater Pipeline, Lake Ferry Wastewater Treatment Plant upgrades, and smart meters. There is every effort made to engage local contractors where we can, and we will continue to do that, particularly as they come into short supply because of response to natural disasters.
Councillor Woodcock.
Yeah, I was actually planning to have a report done by this meeting, but I'm doing a bit more investigation. So at the next meeting, there will be to do with the local contractors, because I've had a complaint from a local Wairarapa contractor about the fact that Wellington Water only has 3 local contractors out of their 15, and they don't differentiate between Wellington and Wairarapa contractors when they allocate their preferred status. I've talked to contractors I know in Wellington, and I have to catch up with some more in the Wairarapa. So there will be more information to come through on that report next meeting.
Well, unless there's any further comment or questions for Councillor Elams, we will draw the meeting to a close with a karakia. Would you like to do that for us, please, Councillor Elam?
Unuhia ki te uru tapunui, kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua I te ara kakatau. Koia rā e rongo, kakairia, ake ki ronga kia tina, huie, taikia.
Thank you very much for your time, everyone.